One of the interesting things about working with rhythm is that you've seen this before. This is the kind of thing you've seen, particularly Yao Cheng Rong, Yao Cheng Guang, when they're doing that kind of very light back work where they're doing punches in threes. In fact, that idea of doing punches in threes that I've talked about before, and we've talked about it in the beginner series, that's okay for teaching you the basics, and it does begin to raise a few issues though. We've talked before about improving fight craft overall, so doing different kinds of combinations that you don't usually see at an earlier stage of emergence within Yiquan. And also, something changes when you start hitting objects or people with power, and that's something that Wang Xiangjai himself emphasizes. For one thing, and the thing that Wang Xiangjai is most interested in, it creates a compression set in the whole body, the body set. So it compresses the whole structure at the point of impact, and that makes it possible to transmit more force that you're generating. And that's why an Yiquan punch can look really light on the air, but when you do it on the bag, it's more powerful. It requires the impact to compress the structure so that the force can be transmitted more efficiently, and that's something we'll come back and look at another time. But the other thing that it does that we're more interested in here is it distorts your overall structure. Inevitably, imagine something's pushing back against your fist as you're trying to use footwork, complicated footwork and combinations. It inevitably pushes back into the body and distorts the structure, and we can see that really easily. Moving around the bag with those old school drills, you never once go out of position. You always maintain face on, centre line towards the opponent. But the moment you change and you start adding in power, then it's not always easy to see on video, but if you try it yourself, you'll see that it pushes you side on in a really awkward way. This one was easier to see because it pushes me really side on in a really awkward way because I add more power into it. And you just don't do that when you're just hitting it light. You don't have that energy pushing back into the body. I'm not dissing the drill, I've done it plenty of times myself, but it needs upgrading if you want to use it for practical purposes. And that means developing intuitive ability to work with different distances, different different interactions of footwork and punch in this case, and also different variations in terms of how you distribute power between combinations, which we've talked a lot about in the beginner series. So if you look carefully, there's a difference between this kind of 1-2, where I'm doing a big extension with the cross, and the kind of punch that I do when I'm doing 1-2 and pull back. And this tells you a lot about that old school Yiquan where they do 3-punch combinations and they put all the power and effort on that last punch, because you can on the last punch, because it doesn't have to pull back into a guard position. Well, from their theoretical perspective, it doesn't. In reality, it does, otherwise you get smacked in the face. And that was a technical upgrade that had to be learned the hard way. But there's other reasons too, so let's take a look on the punch and explain this. So let's say we're practicing in that old way of just hitting it's not the old way, I mean you still practice like this, but you're just hitting the bag light, testing structure, and you can see that the cross doesn't go very far. Everything just touches right on the target, just as you want. But a cross is obviously covering more distance than the jab, so that's got to pull back fast. If you want to keep this rhythm of 1-2, the cross has got to pull back much faster. And that means the more penetration you put into the punch, the more you punch through with it, the harder it is to do that, the harder it is to pull back, which becomes critical if you want to do things like pull back and cover your head, for example. And so intuitive decisions have to be made about how fast we do that cross, how much penetration we get in it, how much power we put in it, how much we sacrifice power in lieu of speed. And sure, you can get all this stuff intuitively over time, but I mean, the old schoolers didn't. You know, it can take generations if you wait for that to happen, so it's a lot easier just to work it out and using rhythm and this idea of rhythm to do it. So what we do first of all is start experimenting. Instead of 1-2, we start thinking 1-2, 1-2. So we're just putting in a little bit more, putting that cross in a little bit longer, and you can start getting this push-off effect with the punch. If you just hold it in a little bit longer, you can push off the opponent when you hit them, which is really, really useful technique, and it's very, very Yiquan, because you can get that disrupting push in and then hit again. And to do that, we've got to sacrifice speed. And when we say speed, we don't mean just the speed of the punch itself. This is what I was getting at in the previous video. It's the overall posture. And for a single punch, it means the punch going out and the punch coming back. That's the overall speed of the posture, not just the speed of the punch going out. And that's why we've got to learn in terms of rhythm. If you just hold it out, hit and stop, that's just one. One. And in this case, it's punch and then cross if you look carefully. So we think of it like 1, 2. And we put that emphasis on the final punch to emphasize that it's just holding out a bit longer, more penetration. So is it 1, 2? Or alternatively, is it 1, 2? Just a little bit more. And you can start feeling it like that, 1, 2. Just putting more emphasis on the second punch, 1, 2. See, pushing in a little bit more with it rather than just pinging. Remember that idea of touching something like it's very hot and pinging back? Well, the more emphasis we put on a technique, the less it's pulling back like you're touching something. Like it can move back at that speed, but it's in terms of the penetration of the posture itself. The more emphasis, the more punch through there is in it, more penetration in it. Now, different kinds of punches have different kinds of effects, and we've talked about this before. Like a short, sharp, very powerful punch can hit and the energy goes up into the bag. But if you start putting a little bit more of that kind of push energy into it, then obviously it pushes the bag back or the person. You know, bags, pads, people, and different people all react differently, but people move. And we've got to think about that and integrate that into our posture. So if we do, like, let's move on into 1, 2, 3. If we do it slow, nice and light, that kind of traditional Yiquan way, you can see the back doesn't move, it stays in the same place, so it's really easy to have all of our punches hit and stop at the same point. And frankly, this is one of the reasons why if you look at Yao Zhongzun's students sparring, certainly early on, they can't make it work because they haven't had these technical upgrades, including, for example, here where we're going to put the emphasis on the cross. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to push the punch bag back with the cross. And that means the jab's then got to go further. So it starts, all we're doing is using open and close with a little bit of rise and sink combined. And we're still using our core principle of hit and stop. But when you actually do hit, even quite light, it pushes a target further back. So this is where we developed or borrowed from Tai Chi Chuan this concept of hit and flow, which we've looked at before. So you hit and stop and then immediately flow into the next punch. These are ideas that had to be developed on the basis of recognizing that targets and people move. And we use this idea of rhythm counts to help us intuitively understand that. So let's think about jab, cross, jab, jab, cross, jab. And let's think about how we and where we put the emphasis. Look, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you can see how it's pushing the punch bag back. And of course, an opponent's head might move in any way, side to side or whatever. Well, this kind of drill won't teach you that either. That's a whole other set of drills that we need to think about. We'll come back to that another time. So now let's change the emphasis back to the more old school way of doing it, and we'll do it 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. And that emphasis means less penetration with the cross, or more what we kind of, this sounds a bit daft, but kind of shock force, where we just hit with structure and fast with the second punch. And the third punch can then have all the emphasis on it. And then let's go back, look again. If we don't put any emphasis on any punch and we do them all equally, 1, 2, 3. Try the other way. Remember, ambidextrous training. And as you speed it up a little bit, then you start thinking about, well, where do I want to put the emphasis here? Because the last thing I want is 3 punches, none of which are really very powerful. I want one that's going to really do some damage. At the very least, try and stop the other person coming forward. If it's a jab or something, I want to have some sting in it. So I think 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I don't want to be thinking about it while I'm sparring or fighting, but we use this kind of rhythm method in training to help us understand this. Once we understand it consciously, then we can start internalizing it intuitively. And you can see here pretty clearly, by the way, all that stuff we've been practicing in Zhanzhuang, in slow movement. You can see just the use of open and close and explosive force. You can see it's just exactly the same thing that we practice when we're doing standing. The movement, open and close, and then just explosive. But now we're adding in this extra dimension of thinking about where we add emphasis, and we're using this idea of rhythm to bring that up consciously into our minds. So 1, 2, 3. And you can think about this when you're doing bag work, and eventually you just start getting the skill of it, and you can add the emphasis wherever you want. It's just like kind of reading music or something like that. Practice it. It's not boring. I'd never find training boring, but it requires a lot of diligence. But you've got to drill this basic stuff. And if you think Wang Shanzhai didn't think that, then you have no idea what Wang Xiangjai actually taught and indeed wrote about explicitly. Drill, drill, drill.